in a bit.
That's why I don't be going to the puffy parties. They can hug you from the front and the back at the same time.
In the tense atmosphere of the federal courtroom in Manhattan, where Sean P. Diddy Combs was standing trial for a series of serious charges, no one could have predicted that a horrific event was about to unfold. When witness Raymond Ellis stepped down from the stand, every eye followed him. But just seconds later, the courtroom plunged into chaos. Screams rang out, chairs clattered, and blood spilled in a place deemed sacred to justice. P. Diddy, once a towering figure in the entertainment industry, had become the victim of an unthinkable attack. The incident immediately shocked the entire nation, raising chilling questions. What had been revealed to make the witness lose control? How did a knife make it past layers of security? This event not only rattled the public, but forced federal legal authorities to re-examine the effectiveness of protective measures for defendants in sensitive trials. It also raised the issue, are current protocols enough to handle the truly unpredictable? Watch this video to uncover a moment that forever changes how America sees justice, fame, and the price of truth. No one expected something like this to happen, right in the heart of what is supposed to be the most secure and orderly legal system in the nation. 1. Diddy attacked in court. On the morning of June 2, 2025, the trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs at the U.S. District Court in Manhattan abruptly shifted from legal tension to a waking nightmare. Inside a courtroom heavily guarded and steeped in legal symbolism, one witness, Raymond Ellis, left the entire room frozen when he suddenly drew a knife and lunged at Diddy, causing the former music mogul to collapse in a pool of red. Just prior to the incident, the trial was reaching its climax, as Raymond Ellis, Diddy's former bodyguard and personal driver from 2007 to 2013, began to deliver testimony after days of silence. Though he had previously refused to cooperate in investigations, Ellis reportedly agreed to testify after being granted immunity. His appearance was highly anticipated, as he was thought to have intimate knowledge of what had gone on during the secret parties, unrecorded late-night trips, and unresolved disappearances linked to Diddy. Raymond described secret parties held in Diddy's mansion, invite-only, undocumented, with no phones allowed and no witnesses beyond a selected few. On those nights, dim lights shimmered through a maze-like mansion, music echoed like hypnosis, and the smell of perfume mixed with cigarettes, hard liquor, and baby oil. A scent so distinct, it often made Ellis shudder. The baby oil, he claimed, was stored in small tubs and large bottles used not just for lubrication, but as a symbol, a prop in the erotic activities behind closed doors. Raymond spoke of special rooms hidden behind sliding walls, windowless chambers bathed in faint purple light, with beds draped in black silk sheets. There, many celebrities, male and female, some instantly recognizable from TV or magazine covers, would arrive in a daze, intoxicated by alcohol, drugs, and perhaps something stronger. Ellis didn't name names, but said faces once seen as cultural icons lost all clarity within 30 minutes of stepping inside. Worse still, he described the quiet arrival of underage boys and girls, not anyone's children, but invited guests, dressed like adults, heavily made up, smiling awkwardly as they were ushered into the center of the room, seemingly trained. On some nights, he saw these children leaving with unsteady steps, dazed eyes, and disheveled hair, passing by the hallway where he stood guard without anyone stopping them. Once he found a young boy, maybe 13 or 14, sitting alone behind a wall, clutching a bottle of water and crying silently. When Ellis approached, the boy simply said, "I don't want to go back in there." Raymond Ellis also testified that these parties often stretched into the early morning. After 3 a.m., the atmosphere would grow even darker and more depraved. A group of middle-aged men, typically music producers, artist managers, or foreign VIP guests, would be ushered into the special section where security cameras were disabled. Diddy usually arrived late, dressed in a silk robe, speaking little, just signaling with his hand. And when he finally spoke, the entire room would fall into dead silence like a ritual. That wasn't a party, Ellis paused, his voice hoarse, eyes cast downward. That was a ritual, something sick, where people were no longer people. When asked about a private party in spring 2012 live at the Hidden Hills mansion in California, once accused of housing drug trafficking and coercive behavior, Raymond revealed a bombshell. In front of dozens in the courtroom, he testified that he saw Diddy force a young woman named Keisha Lamont, a dancer and former girlfriend of a member of Bad Boy, to take stimulants before leading her into a locked room. Raymond's voice was slow but firm, his eyes taut with the struggle of memory. "I stood guard outside the door. I heard screaming," he said, "and the next morning, Keisha was gone. When I asked, I was threatened. I've kept quiet for 13 years, but I can't take this secret to the grave." The courtroom fell deathly silent after that statement. Lawyers, prosecutors, and even the judge froze in place for several seconds. But the silence didn't last. That day's trial seemed set to proceed normally, but then something changed. Raymond's hands trembled as he looked at the screen. An image of a young woman, lightly bound at the wrists, mascara running with tears, and a hoarse, mocking laugh off-screen. "That's Keisha Lamont," he whispered, choking up. "She didn't deserve that. No one does." A prosecutor approached, pressing Raymond to confirm the identities in the recording. A simple question, but one that struck a raw nerve. Suddenly, before anyone could react, Raymond shuddered and stepped back from the witness stand. No one understood what was happening until a cold, metallic click echoed, the sound of steel snapping open. From his sleeve, he drew a sharp, folding knife, the blade glinting under the lights like a shard of fate. The courtroom froze in horror. A second later, pandemonium erupted. "Keisha Lamont was the woman I loved," Raymond shouted, eyes blazing, his voice a roar. "And all those women, all those who were used and broken, they deserve justice." Raymond charged like a beast, pushed to the edge. The distance from the witness stand to the defense table was mere feet. But in his fury, it became a trail of blood. Security screamed into radios, rushing to intercept. But Raymond had already leapt past the jury box and lunged toward Sean Diddy Combs, seated beside his attorney. In a breathless instant, the entire courtroom seemed to collapse into the moment of the first stab, plunging deep into Diddy's left shoulder, shredding the white shirt like slicing through illusion. Diddy's scream echoed. Blood sprayed in bright streaks across the table. Diddy fell backward in panic, clutching his chest, as a second blow struck square in the sternum. Blood pouring like a spring. His lawyer shrieked, scrambling to drag him away, while security charged, one officer firing a stun gun directly into Raymond's torso. The room became a storm of chaos, blood, and shattered sound. Several people stumbled in the rush to flee the courtroom. Diddy, was rushed to the hospital in critical but stable condition. Raymond Ellis was arrested on the spot and remains in custody pending further investigation. The trial has been suspended indefinitely, and the entire federal courthouse security protocol is now under full review after this unprecedented event. 2. Public reaction. Immediately following the horrifying moment, Judge Arun Subramanian shot to his feet. His face visibly pale, eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding before him. With a firm, yet clearly shaken voice, he ordered U.S. Marshals restrain the assailant immediately. Medics to the courtroom. Now, this court is adjourned. Everyone stay seated. Do not leave the room. But his words were drowned in the storm of panic. Some people dove under benches, others fled the gallery, colliding with each other, crashing to the floor, their screams and sobs echoing throughout the hall. In that moment, Diddy's mother, Janice Combs, appeared frozen in place. She stood motionless for several seconds before screaming, "My son! Oh God! That's my son!" Her voice cracked under the weight of grief, and her trembling hand reached out as if to grasp at the bloodied figure, only to be restrained by security. Beside her, Diddy's eldest son, Justin, tried to stay composed, but tears streamed down his face as he shouted into his phone. "Call an ambulance. Hurry, my dad's been stabbed." Tell them Diddy was stabbed in federal court outside the courthouse. The crowd that had gathered early to follow the trial via a large screen erupted into chaos as the news spread. A woman filming with her phone sobbed. He deserved that for what he did to Keisha and so many others. Meanwhile, another group shouted, "That was attempted murder." No one has the right to take justice into their own hands. In a courtroom, the NYPD had to deploy mounted police and erect steel barricades across 3 city blocks to secure the area. Reactions from celebrities in the entertainment industry were no less dramatic. One ex-user spotted a cryptic post from rapper 50 Cent's account shortly before the incident. "Karma is a funny thing, and it always shows up on time." The post was swiftly deleted, but not before it went viral, fueling speculation that some in the industry might have had foreknowledge of what was about to occur in court. The U.S. Attorney's Office released a statement later that same day. "We strongly condemn the act of violence that occurred during the trial of Mr. Sean Combs. This incident represents a grave breach of courtroom security and endangered lives. Our office remains committed to prosecuting criminal behavior to the fullest extent and will investigate all security lapses that may have enabled this attack." Judge Subramanian, after evacuating all court personnel and participants, convened an emergency meeting with the internal security team. One attendee reported, "He didn't shout, but his voice was laced with fury. He asked, 'How many layers of security checks?' and yet someone walked in with a folding knife. This is a federal courthouse, not a circus." That question landed like a slap to the face of a judicial system once thought to be untouchable. That night, images of Diddy lying motionless on a stretcher oxygen tube, in his nose, eyes closed, graced the front pages of nearly every major newspaper. The fall of a mogul blood, in the courtroom, justice or vengeance. His music empire, once built on a foundation of sound, money and power, now teetered on the edge of a bottomless pit where the stab wounds were only the beginning of what could be far darker days ahead. The trial of Sean Combs had become a vortex of chaos, not just because of the attack, but because of the devastating testimonies that preceded it. In the days prior, during federal proceedings, Cassie Ventura, Diddy's longtime girlfriend of more than a decade, didn't just shed tears. She turned horror into testimony. She recounted nights when she was forced into twisted sex parties, so-called freak-offs, relying on stimulants to survive and appease a man the outside world once revered as an icon. How does a pregnant woman endure over 10 years of such trauma and still stand to speak her truth before a court? That wasn't all. Following Cassie's testimony, Eddie Garcia, a former hotel security officer, provoked nationwide outrage when he revealed that Diddy once paid him $100,000 to cover up a video showing him assaulting Cassie at the Intercontinental Hotel. In the footage, Diddy, wearing only a towel, is seen violently attacking her, dragging her down the hallway as if she were less than human. Deontay Nash, Cassie's stylist, couldn't stay silent either. He testified to witnessing Cassie in panic-stricken states, once needing stitches after a head injury. According to Nash, Diddy didn't just abuse her body, he shattered her spirit, turning her into a hollow shell, living inside a golden cage. Most chilling was the testimony of Sean Deering, a former escort, who admitted to being hired to have sex with Cassie at Diddy's parties, where Diddy was present, and even recorded the acts. He described the vacant look in Cassie's eyes, how she avoided contact, and the deep-rooted fear embedded in her every move. Rapper Kid Cudi, another prominent name, was summoned as well. He confirmed that after Diddy discovered his relationship with Cassie, Cudi's Porsche was set on fire right outside his home. Was it a coincidence, a warning, or a blatant message that crossing Diddy would come at a price? Dawn Richard, a former member of Danity Kane, the girl group Diddy assembled, recounted seeing him raise a frying pan as if to strike Cassie. And after she fell, he kicked her like discarded trash. She could never forget Cassie's eyes that day, not filled with tears, but with the resignation of someone who had learned to accept pain as routine. And finally, there was Mia, a former assistant who testified anonymously. She claimed that she was sexually assaulted multiple times by Diddy whenever Cassie was away. She described the workplace under Diddy's control as hell on earth, a place without rules, without kindness, ruled only by absolute power and spiritual destruction. This isn't just a trial. It's the collapse of an icon and a wake-up call for the entire entertainment industry. Under the blinding lights of fame, how much darkness has been buried and how many victims still remain nameless. 3. Dangerous conditions in prison. Immediately after the blade touched flesh and the first chilling scream echoed through the courtroom, a question like a third knife stabbed straight into the public's trust. How could Raymond Ellis, a closely monitored witness, possibly smuggle a weapon into a federal courtroom in the heart of Manhattan? This was not just an ordinary district court. The U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, where Diddy's trial was taking place, had long been considered one of the most impenetrable legal fortresses in the country. Security here has been likened to that of a presidential airport, with multiple layers of rigorous screening, including multidimensional metal detectors, high-capacity X-ray scanners, specially trained K-9 units, and a federal security force directly overseen by the U.S. Marshals Service. In typical court sessions, every individual, whether a witness, attorney, or observer, is required to leave behind phones, smartwatches, metal objects, and even belts with iron buckles. In high-profile trials involving celebrities, organized crime, or human rights violations, security is elevated to another level. Every document bag is scanned 3 times. Each water bottle is inspected for origin, and even the smallest gestures are monitored by surveillance cameras installed at all 4 corners of the room. Yet despite these near impenetrable layers of protection, Raymond Ellis silently managed to bring a folding knife into the courtroom. And not only did he carry it in, he concealed it in his sleeve for tens of minutes, bypassing the eyes of security personnel, surveillance cameras, and the very system built to prevent precisely this scenario. Authorities have yet to provide a clear explanation. Some anonymous internal sources suggested that Raymond may have entered through a private witness entrance, which follows a more flexible security protocol to avoid contact with the defendant. Another theory posits that the knife was expertly hidden inside a custom-stitched compartment within the sleeve of his blazer, and the metal detector failed to catch it because the blade was made from an alloy with low magnetic response, a shocking detail that sparked criticism over the lax evaluation of security equipment. Amidst the uproar, Sean Diddy Combs remains in custody at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He is facing serious charges including funding prostitution operations, forced sex trafficking fraud, and conspiracy to commit crimes. If convicted, he could face 15 years to life imprisonment, a sentence that could close the curtain on the entire empire he once built. The MDC in Brooklyn is infamous for its harsh detention conditions and has been the temporary holding facility for many disgraced power players, from financial criminals to war criminals. According to close sources from his defense team, Diddy's mental state is deteriorating significantly. He suffers from chronic insomnia, barely eats, and frequently experiences mild panic attacks at night. On one occasion, guards found him sitting with his knees drawn to his chest for hours, staring blankly into space, as if reliving or fleeing from something unspeakable. A prison nurse had to request special monitoring after Diddy scribbled a note in pencil on the back of a free Gideon Bible. "If there's no way out, maybe I have to make one for myself." The prison administration immediately placed him under self-harm watch, stripping him of anything that could be used to inflict injury, from shoelaces to metal spoons. For hours at a time, he has been under constant camera surveillance, forced to sleep in a cell with the lights on, a condition that only deepens his psychological turmoil. A psychiatrist who evaluated Diddy described him as being in a state of high-level anxiety disorder mixed with acute onset depression. His mind is like a prison within the prison itself, dark and without a key. Before being detained at the MDC, Brooklyn, Diddy's lawyer, Mr. Mark, filed multiple motions for bail. Notably, in his third attempt, he proposed a $50 million bond and promised that Diddy would comply strictly with house arrest conditions and refrain from interfering with the ongoing investigation. However, the federal court in Manhattan denied the request, citing that Diddy posed a risk of influencing witnesses and continuing to break the law if released. Worse still, each passing day sees Diddy's name repeatedly mentioned in the news, but no longer in relation to new music charity events or fashion labels. Instead, he is referred to as the powerful rapist Hollywood's sex kingpin and manipulator, and psychological abuser of vulnerable women. Newspapers, social media, television, they all seem to compete in tearing down a once revered figure, while Diddy sits silently with no right to retaliate, no ability to control anything but his own breathing. Sources from the detention center also revealed that Diddy has refused to see family members, even his mother, the woman who had stood by him through every major crisis of his life. During their first visitation, when his mother broke down and asked Sean, "Are you okay?" Diddy only shook his head and buried his face in the table without uttering a word. His lawyer, despite his best efforts, admitted that his client is now virtually incapable of cooperating with any clear legal strategy because his psyche is overwhelmed by fear, trauma, and despair. With these severe charges, if convicted, Diddy could face 15 years to life imprisonment. But in reality, the sentence has already begun. He is living the harshest punishment of all, the total collapse of his inner self. From a criminal psychology standpoint, numerous studies have shown that courtroom environments, especially in high-stakes criminal trials, can provoke extreme emotional responses. Participants, from victims' families to defendant supporters, can be swept into emotional turmoil and behave in ways beyond rational planning, especially under the pressure of media attention and symbolic weight of the event. The solemn atmosphere, the gravity of the allegations, and the social impact of the trial can generate intense psychological stress. This may trigger outbursts such as anger, attention-seeking, or even violence in the name of retaliation, vengeance, or personal statement. Factors like prolonged feelings of helplessness, festering resentment, and the belief that justice is being denied can fuel extreme behavior within the courtroom setting. Therefore, federal security experts emphasize that threat assessments must not rely solely on observable action, but must also consider the psychological profiles of individuals who may be motivated to commit violent acts under courtroom stress. Careful preparation, including identifying potential risks and implementing targeted preventative measures, is indispensable for every high-profile trial. 4. Security is a serious issue. Historically, numerous security incidents have occurred in federal courts, particularly in cases involving defendants with high social status or links to organized crime. These precedents offer practical insights into how the legal system responds in order to maintain safety and continuity in judicial proceedings. A prominent example is the case of mafia boss John Gotti, who once faced serious threats and incidents while on trial in New York. At the time, the court had to implement special protection measures, from tightly controlling information to increasing the presence of armed security forces. This shows that cases involving organized or high-profile elements inherently carry a high risk of security breaches. Recent federal cases also clearly reflect the growing trend of heightened alerts and security risks. Violations of courtroom rules, threats targeting defendants or attorneys, and the increasing presence of extremist groups have forced many trials to adjust procedures to ensure absolute safety for all participants. Legal historians note that courtroom security has undergone significant development in response to past incidents, thereby forming more effective threat prevention strategies. Improvements in facility design, surveillance procedures, and coordination between security forces are built upon practical experience and lessons from previous security failures. This accumulated knowledge has helped modern courts, especially federal ones, become more robust and responsive to real-world risks. In high-alert cases like that of Sean Diddy Combs' detention, and transport procedures for the defendant are organized according to strict protocols. Federal defendant transport plans are designed to ensure absolute safety, not just for the defendant, but also for the public law enforcement personnel and court participants. These plans include carefully planned routes, the use of armored or specially monitored vehicles, and coordination among multiple security units throughout the journey. Following this high-profile case, Diddy's movements to and from federal court may require special security planning considering his global fame and the seriousness of the charges he faces. Each transfer becomes a test for the security system and an opportunity to evaluate and further improve preventive measures. Every court appearance poses potential risks from attacks on the defendant to media threats or disruptions of order. At federal detention centers, high-risk defendants like Diddy are also placed under special management. Threats may come from fellow inmates, acquaintances of the victims, or even individuals in society with personal motives. The detention system enforces preventive measures such as isolation, communication control, and strict monitoring to prevent harm during the pretrial period. When new threats emerge, security procedures can be flexibly adjusted to respond swiftly. Additional protective measures will be deployed depending on the severity and nature of the threat to ensure uninterrupted legal proceedings and to uphold the safety and legal rights of the defendant in accordance with the law. Security incidents in court can have far-reaching effects on the entire legal process. In some cases, the court may be forced to postpone hearings, change venues, or adjust trial procedures. These disruptions directly impact the strategies of both the prosecution and defense, and can cause stress for judges, attorneys, witnesses, and other stakeholders in the case. Federal judges have the authority to implement necessary measures to protect trial participants while ensuring the constitutional rights of the defendant, such as the right to a public trial and due process. However, the psychological impact of security incidents, especially violent ones, on participants can reduce their ability to concentrate, cooperate, or even lead to mental disorders. In such cases, the involvement of mental health professionals may become essential. Moreover, intense media coverage of courtroom security incidents significantly shapes public perception. It can skew public opinion, affect fair jury selection, and complicate the witness testimony process. In high-profile cases like Diddy's, balancing safety and the transparency of judicial proceedings becomes a formidable challenge. Ultimately, high-profile cases often have a profound psychological impact on victims and their families. These individuals may view the trial as their final chance to confront the defendant or reclaim justice they believe was denied. In Diddy's case, the federal charges involve systematic harm over a prolonged period, increasing the likelihood of strong emotional reactions from those who identify as his victims. This turns every hearing into not just a legal event, but also a major social and emotional focal point. Media coverage and public reaction to courtroom security incidents are often rapid and intense, especially when the defendant is a public figure. With the 24-hour news cycle and the viral nature of social media, any courtroom event can become a national headline within minutes. This creates additional pressure for upcoming trials and compels the justice system to reassess both its security and public communications strategies. Public reactions to courtroom violence often reflect deeper views on justice and the responsibilities of celebrities. The public may be divided between demands for harsh punishment and the defense of the defendant's rights, especially if the individual holds significant influence. At the same time, uncontrolled or speculative media reporting on security incidents can distort the case effect, witness testimony, jury selection, and the overall fairness of the trial. Diddy's case is part of a broader context of high-level federal trials, especially those involving figures from the entertainment industry. These cases require not only legal expertise, but also the ability to manage media security and social emotions. Federal agencies have accumulated substantial experience in handling such cases, from organized crime groups to famous individuals facing serious allegations. The resources mobilized for these cases typically include protective forces, security equipment, and adjustments to trial procedures. Effective coordination among federal, local, and courtroom security agencies is key to protecting the interests of all parties involved and maintaining order during the trial process. Success in preventing violence and keeping the proceedings on track not only determines the fairness of the trial, but also directly affects public trust in the federal criminal justice system. When everything is run tightly and transparently, it reinforces the system's ability to handle the most complex and sensitive cases. 5. New legislative proposals. After the horrifying attack at the federal courthouse in New York targeting Sean P. Diddy Combs, the federal government and the U.S. judicial system were forced to respond swiftly to fill long-overlooked security gaps in public trials involving high-profile defendants. The incident not only shocked public opinion, but also raised serious concerns about the safety of all parties involved in litigation, particularly individuals who have been publicly judged even before any official verdict is delivered. Violence in the courtroom can have severe psychological consequences for everyone involved, from defendants, attorneys, and court staff to observers. These individuals typically expect the courtroom to be a controlled and safe environment, so witnessing sudden acts of violence can become a traumatic experience. Such impacts not only disrupt proceedings, but also affect the participants' ability to continue engaging in legal activities. In response to these risks, federal courts have established psychological support systems for affected individuals. They are granted access to mental health professionals and trauma counselors to help them cope with the negative psychological effects of courtroom security incidents. This plays a crucial role in enabling them to maintain their roles in the legal process without emotional deterioration. The U.S. Senate swiftly passed the Federal Defendant Protection Act, which mandates enhanced layers of security at all federal trials deemed sensitive, including those involving celebrity defendants, key witnesses, or individuals with a history of threats. The legislation requires courts to conduct security risk assessments before each hearing in coordination with judicial, police, domestic intelligence agencies, and federal agents. A noteworthy provision in the new law is the mandatory implementation of a safety shield, a physical barrier between the witness stand and the defendant's table in cases where witnesses are identified as having a potential for emotional outbursts or a history of violence. Furthermore, all witnesses in such trials must undergo stringent security screening equivalent to that of public officials, including psychological and behavioral background checks. The administration also passed an emergency $180 million budget package to equip courtrooms with behavior monitoring technologies, including gesture emotion and anomaly detection systems powered by artificial intelligence. These systems are designed to identify early warning signs and alert security personnel before an actual attack occurs. In Diddy's specific case, after surviving the attack, he was placed under 24/7 federal protection at an undisclosed location. This is part of the newly launched Special Defendant Protection Program, which grants high-risk defendants protection, similar to witnesses in organized crime cases. This unprecedented move applying such measures to a defendant rather than a witness can only be enacted through an emergency order from the Department of Justice. Legal experts warn that the Diddy case may trigger a domino effect where courts must trade public transparency for military-level control and surveillance. Some civil liberties organizations have voiced concerns that these laws could erode the public nature of justice, a principle enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. However, much of the public agrees that such measures are necessary in an age where social media and radicalized public opinion can turn courtrooms into battlegrounds. Finally, the National Judicial Administration Council also recommended the addition of emergency security training courses specifically designed for all federal judges and attorneys. These trainings aim to help them recognize warning signs and make rapid decisions in unexpected attack scenarios. The Diddy trial may have ended in blood and steel, but its legal aftershocks will last for years and reshape the face of security in the U.S. justice system for decades to come. The current question is whether high-profile defendants should receive enhanced security measures or whether all defendants should be treated equally under the law. This is a contentious issue as it touches on legal equality, a foundational value of the U.S. justice system. We encourage you, those who care about justice, to join the discussion. How do you think federal courts should balance public access with safety? Should enhanced security measures be reserved for celebrity defendants or be standardized for everyone? Leave your opinion in the comments section and share your perspective on how the legal system can improve in today's increasingly complex environment. Hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest updates on this case and in-depth analyses related to federal courtroom security. Thank you for watching.
And I was watching him very closely. I saw like his hand shaking a bit.
That's why I don't be going to the puffy parties. They can hug you from the front and the back at the same time.
In the tense atmosphere of the federal courtroom in Manhattan, where Sean P. Diddy Combs was standing trial for a series of serious charges, no one could have predicted that a horrific event was about to unfold. When witness Raymond Ellis stepped down from the stand, every eye followed him. But just seconds later, the courtroom plunged into chaos. Screams rang out, chairs clattered, and blood spilled in a place deemed sacred to justice. P. Diddy, once a towering figure in the entertainment industry, had become the victim of an unthinkable attack. The incident